So Leque Island is a really special project because of just where it's located. It's right where historically Skagit Bay and Port Susan Bay converged, which is right in the river deltas of some of our largest, most important rivers in Puget Sound.
So Leque was one of the first areas that was settled in this area. The areas closest to Puget Sound were settled first. They had not as many trees, and so they were able to build levees around the tidal wetlands and cut the tides off, and then drain the land and then farm it. And so Leque was farmed early on in the 1800s, and it was farmed all the way through into the 1970s and 80s. The state at some point acquired it, I think in the 1960s or 70s. And then the dike started failing, especially in the 90s and 2000s, and the state didn't have enough money to repair. At the same time, the tribes were really interested in restoring tidal wetlands to benefit fish and wildlife, and especially fish. And so DU partnered with the state and with the tribe, and we started designing a project to move the levees back and restore the tidal wetlands that had been there in the 1800s.
DU wants to get involved because it's the right thing to do for the birds. It's complicated. It's really complicated, especially when you're thinking about how much land needs to be there for agriculture, because agriculture is also really important for birds.
Yeah, so Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, we own and manage over 1 million acres in the state of Washington. And not all of those acres function optimally for habitat. And so Ducks Unlimited plays a huge role in a helpful partnership in helping us do projects that improve our wildlife areas in the habitat realm, and also make them more accessible for people to recreate. And so in this Leque Island project, Ducks Unlimited and Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife started working together in the late 90s, looking at potentially doing a project there. It took us 20 years to finally do a project. The project had a lot of starts and stops, a lot of challenges, but Ducks Unlimited stuck with it, with Department of Fish and Wildlife, and really that stick-to-itiveness, I think, is really what ended up allowing us to do a big, neat project there. Without Ducks Unlimited, I can't say that there would be a project there today. It was such an important project, in fact, that Ducks Unlimited won our Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife Organization of the Year Award after doing the project.
So our partnership with DU has been ongoing for many years. We started supporting local chapters, organizations through trade shows, through national events. It's been an ongoing partnership for many years. Again, being a brand that's been rooted in the outdoors and having a history, it's important for us to partner with DU. They have a long history and a proven track record of preserving, conserving, and managing wild places. And those places are not just beneficial for North America waterfowl, but also from a diverse, complex, background for supporting wildlife and plenty of other, people that enjoy using these lands.
So I'd say, a project like this is, we worked really long and hard with the local community. This project mattered to a lot of people, and not necessarily just people who wanted to restore it for fish and wildlife. It's what people saw before the project is they would leave Camano Island and enter the mainland and see what looked like a farm field, not realizing that historically it was an estuary. And now when they leave Camano Island and hit the mainland, they pass an intertidal marsh that's full of water for several hours a day. So it makes Camano Island feel a lot more like an island.
Yeah, Leque it's in transition now. It's a newly restored tidal marsh, so it's going to have a slightly different group of birds than it will eventually. So it is reestablishing itself as a marsh. You get a lot more vegetation as time goes on. So the sites will kind of tell you when they're ready. They might be subsided, the dikes might be failing. At Leque, the state had just finished fixing the highway. That was one of the things that was blocking the project because you don't want to wash out a highway. It was the right time to restore this site.
Conservation-wise, Ducks Unlimited and the other nonprofits do a great deal in this state by partnering, depending on whether it's in eastern Washington or here on the coast. You may not be aware, but there are 54 treaty tribes in Washington state. And the opportunity to partner with the various Indian nations has been, I think, a real boon to some of the conservation efforts, particularly with salmon restoration and being able to partner Ducks Unlimited projects with Wildlife Department salmon projects.
For me personally, it just comes down to kind of my core values, I'd say. I grew up as a hunter, as a fisherman, and moving out to the Northwest, really seeing how unique this place is. To me, it's just really beneficial to have wild places and also partner with DU, other conservation organizations that a brand like Filson can also get involved and really think about what the future is going to look like and how do we partner in a meaningful way that is beneficial to keeping these wild places alive and healthy.
Yeah, what makes me really passionate about it is I like to see the habitat as optimal as it can be for as many different critters as it can. And these salt marsh projects are really great for birds, but the benefits they have for the aquatic ecosystem, especially Chinook salmon, this is it's the key point in their development so they can get big enough to go out to the ocean. And also just knowing that Washington is going to become more and more important as the climate changes, and especially places like this are going to be refuges. When there's no water in the Klamath, we're going to have water at Leque.